You see it all the time, right? The Instagram posts of private jets, the designer clothes, those massive mansion tours. We're constantly shown this one version of what rich looks like. But what if I told you that's mostly just a performance? What if the real, actual process of building wealth is quiet, methodical, and honestly, feels kind of boring? Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain on that.
And I'll be the first to admit, I used to think wealth was that one big flashy moment too. You know, the huge startup exit or the winning lottery ticket. But the truth? Building real, lasting wealth isn't a fireworks show. It's more like the slow, quiet sunrise of financial independence. It's so subtle, in fact, that the people doing it right are often just too busy executing their plan to even stop and notice how far they've actually come.
And here's the thing, you could be on that exact path right now and not even know it. So let's think of this as a kind of financial check-in. We're about to walk through 8 of the most powerful but incredibly subtle signs that you are, in fact, secretly building a life of real financial strength.
All right, first things first. We have to start here with the absolute bedrock of it all. Look, these aren't flashy investment tactics or get-rich-quick schemes. These are the fundamental, non-negotiable habits that create the stability you need for any real growth. Because without this foundation, everything else is pretty much just wishful thinking.
So, sign number 1 is that you've mastered this core principle. Now, let's be super clear here. This has absolutely nothing to do with being cheap or feeling deprived. Not at all. It's about being intentional. It means you choose to drive a reliable 5-year-old car instead of leasing the brand new model. Not because you can't afford the payment, but because you know that difference in cost is rocket fuel for your future. You've just stopped spending money to signal success to other people.
And this right here just lays it all out, plain and simple. You've got Rich Richard and Poor Peter. They make the exact same salary, but their financial worlds couldn't be more different. Richard intentionally creates a $20,000 gap every single year. That's not just savings, that is the raw material for his freedom. And Peter? Well, Peter looks the part, but he's living in a financial prison, completely shackled to his next paycheck.
That gap we're talking about, it has a name. It's your financial margin. And I want you to remember this because it is, without a doubt, the single most powerful number in your entire financial life. It's not leftover money. It's the engine. It's the raw material from which all real wealth is built.
And the very first thing you do with that margin is you build a fortress. We can call it a financial buffer or an emergency fund, but really, it's a shield against chaos. This is the one thing that turns a life-altering catastrophe, like a sudden job loss or a huge medical bill, into just an annoying challenge that you have the time, the space, and the resources to solve. It literally buys you breathing room, and you just can't put a price on that.
So what's the goal here? The general rule of thumb is to have 3 to 6 months of your essential living expenses tucked away in a savings account. And of course, that number is personal to you. If you have a super stable job and no dependents, maybe 3 months feels great. But if you're a freelancer with a family, you're probably going to sleep a lot better at night with 6 or maybe even 9 months saved up. The point is, you've built a cushion that lets you make decisions from a place of stability, not sheer panic.
Now, I really want you to let this next part sink in. If you have that buffer in place, right now, you are already in a stronger financial position than roughly 75% of all Americans. That is not a small thing. It is a monumental step that proves you are on the right track, even if nobody else can see it.
Okay, this next one. This is a true superpower because it's a psychological battle we all face. It's called lifestyle inflation or lifestyle creep. And it's basically the default setting for most of us, right? You get a raise, you get a bigger apartment. You get a bonus, you get a fancier car. Why? Because that's what society tells us success is supposed to look like. But if you get a raise and your very first thought isn't, ooh, what can I buy? But instead is, how much faster can I hit my goals now? Well, you have fundamentally rewired your brain for wealth.
And this chart just shows the 2 different paths so clearly. Richard gets a raise and you can see his spending barely even moves. He takes almost all of that extra income and just pours it straight into his investments, accelerating his path to freedom. Peter gets the exact same raise and his spending shoots right up to meet it. He's working harder, he's earning more, but he's not getting any wealthier. He's just upgrading his hamster wheel.
And that's a perfect lead into our next section, because all of these foundational habits, they're born from a really powerful psychological shift. See, building wealth isn't really about complicated spreadsheets or market analysis. At the end of the day, it's about what goes on between your ears. It's a mindset game.
And this one is huge. It means you've traded that sugar rush of short-term wins for the deep, lasting satisfaction of long-term growth. Our culture is constantly screaming at us about getting rich quick. You know, the meme stock, the NFT flip.
That's a lottery ticket mentality. The quietly wealthy? They're playing a completely different game. They're not hunters, they're farmers. They are patiently and consistently planting seeds, knowing that the real harvest is years, even decades down the road.
Now, what's so wild about this slide is just the sheer undeniable power of being boring and consistent. So Richard invests $500 a month. After 10 years, he's put in $60,000 of his own money. But just look at year 20. His own contributions are only $120,000, but his portfolio is now worth over $350,000. The last 10 years did way more work than the first 10. Just pause for a second and think about that. What could you do with an extra $250,000 that your money earned for you? What kind of freedom does that buy? That right there is the prize for playing the long game.
But you can only play that long game if you've truly mastered this next sign. You've officially opted out of the comparison game. And this might be the most difficult psychological hurdle of them all. It means you see a friend post their new $60,000 truck on social media, and instead of feeling that little pang of envy, you feel nothing, because you understand the secret. What people truly own, their investments, their savings, their freedom, that's all invisible. What you can see is almost always what they owe.
I mean, just look at the difference in reaction here. A friend gets a new truck. Richard's thought process is totally internal. Hey, good for him. Now back to my plan. He's running his own race. Peter's reaction is external and comparative. Oh man, I need to keep up. He lets someone else's spending dictate his financial choices, and that single decision could easily cost him years of progress. Your ability to just ignore that noise isn't just a shield, it's a core financial strength.
And that brings us to the final and maybe most important psychological shift, taking radical ownership. This is the moment you stop being a passenger in your own financial life and you firmly grab the steering wheel. It's so easy to look at the economy, at inflation, at the housing market, and just say, the system is rigged, I can't win. And look, those challenges are very real. But the ownership mindset says, okay, given all of that, what can I actually control?
So what happens is, this mindset completely changes your language, and that language, in turn, changes your reality. You stop blaming external forces. You focus maniacally on the things you can control, like your spending and your savings rate. And most importantly, you banish the phrase, I can't afford it, from your vocabulary. Instead, you start saying, that's not a priority for me right now. See the difference? One is a statement of helplessness, the other is a declaration of power. It confirms that you are the one in charge of the choices.
Okay, so you've laid the foundation. You've made that crucial mental shift. So where's the big reward? Where's the fancy car? Well, the biggest payoffs of quiet wealth are, well, they're quiet. They are internal. And trust me, they are far more valuable than any luxury good you could ever buy.
And the first big payoff is this. Money stops being the main character in your life story. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, money feels like a loud, screaming toddler that demands all of your attention 24/7. But once you build systems, automating your savings, your investments, your bill payments, that toddler finally goes to sleep. The noise just fades into the background. And all of a sudden, your mind is free to focus on bigger things.
This chart just illustrates that freedom perfectly. Look at where all of Peter's mental energy is going. It's a constant, exhausting cycle of stress and just trying to survive. Now look at Richard. Because his financial engine is running quietly and automatically in the background, his mind is free to focus on what actually matters: his health, his family, his passion projects, his legacy. He has the mental bandwidth to actually design a life, not just survive one.
And that cognitive freedom leads to the absolute ultimate sign that you're getting rich, and maybe the entire point of this whole journey. You start to feel rich in time. You realize that the most valuable asset you will ever have isn't in your bank account. It's the finite number of hours you have in a day. And the true purpose of building wealth is simply to buy back control over those hours.
These things right here, these are the true luxury goods of the 21st century. I mean, think about it. Nobody posts a selfie on Instagram captioned, "Just said no to a meeting that could have been an email." But that is a profound act of wealth. Paying to get your groceries delivered isn't just buying convenience. It's buying back an hour of your life. This is what real freedom looks and feels like. It's not about adding more stuff. It's about creating more space.
So as we start to wrap this up, let's just zoom all the way out. With all of this quiet, boring, disciplined effort, what are you really building? It's not just a pile of money. It's a life of profound resilience. It's a life with options. It's a life that doesn't collapse when the world gets turbulent, but instead gives you the strength to navigate it completely on your own terms.
So if any of this sounded even remotely familiar to you, if it doesn't quite feel like you're getting rich yet, well, that's probably the clearest sign of all that you are. You're just doing it quietly. And that is exactly how it's supposed to happen. Keep going.